We all wonder about it at some point. What does it feel like to die? Is it just fading to black? Well, what if I told you it might be the exact opposite? A final, brilliant flash of consciousness. For centuries, what happens in our final moments has been a total mystery, right? Wrapped up in fear and uncertainty. But now, believe it or not, science is starting to pull back the curtain.
So let's get right to it. What does it actually feel like to die? In this explainer, we're going to follow the science and walk through the biological process step by step to see what researchers have learned from studying the brains and bodies of people in their final moments.
And what's so fascinating is what they're finding. It turns out this journey, it's not the chaotic, scary event we all picture from the movies. Not at all. It's actually a highly structured process, and scientists, they're getting closer than ever to really understanding this profound human experience. Okay, so where does it start? Well, for most people in the Western world who pass away in a hospital or hospice, it doesn't begin with some dramatic event. It's actually really quiet. It starts with a simple loss of hunger and thirst. In fact, physicians have a name for this. They call it the beginning of active dying. It's basically the body starting its final natural shutdown. And this first stage is all about the body kind of knowing what to do. It's this natural process of conserving energy. You could think of it as a phase defined by rest and just a gradual, peaceful letting go. So here's how it usually goes. It kicks off with this intense, almost blissful feeling of relaxation. That leads to a loss of appetite and then this deep, overwhelming tiredness. From there, the person starts to drift in and out of consciousness. Kind of like a boat gently untying itself from the dock. And while that's happening to the body, what's going on in the mind is absolutely fascinating. There was a study on pre-death dreams, and they found that they are often incredibly comforting. Get this, the most common dream for 72% of patients was of reuniting with loved ones who'd already passed. And a lot of them also dreamed about preparing for some kind of journey. So here's the really crucial part. This stage isn't scary for the person going through it. When they're slipping into unconsciousness, it just feels like being asleep. In fact, studies of patients who later woke up totally confirm this. They had no idea they were ever unconscious. It's like a sleep you just can't be woken up from. All right, so as the body keeps relaxing, the brain enters a whole new phase. And this is where some of those well-known but often misunderstood sensory experiences start to happen. I'm sure you've heard stories about people seeing the light, right? Well, it turns out science has a pretty solid biological explanation for that now. Think of your brain like an orchestra. As it starts to power down, the conductor, that's the part that handles inhibition, starts to lose its grip. This lets the visual section just go for it, play its own tune. It fires spontaneously, and boom, that's what creates the experience of seeing a bright light. Okay, another thing that can be really upsetting for family and friends is something called the death rattle. I know, the name itself sounds terrifying, but it's so important to understand what's actually happening. It's purely mechanical. See, an unconscious person's breathing is automatic, but because their throat is so relaxed, saliva can pool there, and that's what creates that loud, rattling sound. And this really highlights the disconnect between what people on the outside see and what the person is actually feeling. That sound, it is not a sign of struggle. Quite the opposite, actually. It's happening precisely because the person is so profoundly relaxed that they're not even consciously swallowing anymore. They are feeling zero distress. But this is where the story takes a truly mind-blowing turn. Just as the body is shutting down, the brain does something completely unexpected. It doesn't fade away. Nope. It lights up like a firework. The first clue about this came back in 2013 from a huge study on rats. Researchers were monitoring their brains at the exact moment of cardiac arrest, and they were expecting to see activity just fizzle out. But instead, they were completely stunned. They saw a massive final surge of highly organized brain activity. Just look at this chart. It shows the coherence, basically the organization, of brain waves. Let's go back to that orchestra analogy. In a normal waking state, it's like the musicians are all playing their own parts. During high-level thinking, they're playing in harmony. But in the dying brain, wow, it's like they're all singing in perfect, powerful unison. The coherence was even higher than what scientists see during intense conscious thought. The brain wasn't fading out. It was having one last, incredibly ordered hurrah. And hey, this isn't just something that happens in rats. A big study of 567 humans who were undergoing CPR found the exact same thing. A powerful surge of what are called gamma waves, which we associate with heightened consciousness. and this super organized brain activity right on the edge of death. This gave us a direct biological reason for the incredibly vivid, lucid, and often life-changing experiences that survivors talk about. So what did those survivors remember? It wasn't chaos or confusion. Not at all. It was these profound, conscious-like experiences. They talked about a sense of floating, of separating from their body, of watching events happen without any pain or distress. They mentioned a meaningful and often peaceful review of their life, and this powerful feeling of heading towards a place that just felt like home. This is very likely the personal experience of that final, massive brain surge. So what does all this mean? When we put all these pieces of the puzzle together, the scientific picture of dying really starts to challenge our deepest cultural fears about the whole thing. We tend to see death as this terrifying moment of failure, an abrupt, chaotic end. But what the science is starting to show us is something else entirely. It's a structured biological process, one that's potentially peaceful, and it might culminate not in a fade to black, but in a final, absolutely brilliant surge of consciousness. It seems the end of the journey might be far more ordered and way more profound than we ever imagined. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. If dying isn't just an ending, but maybe a final, vivid experience, how does that change the way we think about living?